Hello, everyone, and welcome to our FedTransaction Analyzer webinar. My name is Vanessa Lee, and I'm a Product Strategy Director for the Fedwire Funds service and sponsor of today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us today to discuss how the FedTransaction Analyzer can aid with your management of Fedwire payments. Our goal here today is to demonstrate the value of having important transaction data at your fingertips, and we hope this webinar will expand your understanding of the tool and bring value to your institution. If we can turn to the agenda slide, I would briefly like to go over the agenda for today. So in the webinar today, we will discuss why you may consider employing the FedTransaction Analyzer or continue using it, and the ways in which it can help your institution. We'll take a few minutes describing the FTA's key features and give you a feel for the user experience. After that, we'll get into the substance of our webinar and talk more about the potential business applications and how the tool can help you understand your operating environment, including the relevance to your risk and compliance functions, cash and liquidity management functions, to name a couple of examples. Finally, we'll touch on additional resources you may want to consider as well. So before I turn it over to the main speakers to introduce themselves and walk you through the program, let me conclude briefly by sharing a recent anecdote in which a Fedwire customer accessing our service through a third-party vendor called us with a missing wire problem. The missing wire probably was a result of a connectivity issue or an applications issue with the third-party service provider. But this is when FTA, the FedTransaction Analyzer, came to the rescue. It proved to be a record of the payment with Federal Reserve Financial Services that ultimately identified the wire in question. A problem like this probably does not occur too frequently, but I think the example helps to illustrate how the tool can come in handy when you need it. As always, we welcome the opportunity to engage with you and understand how the FedTransaction Analyzer is providing value to you and to your organization, as well as how we can enhance the FTA in the future to meet your needs. So with this introduction, please allow me to turn it over to our speakers, Rob Williams and Triandus Luke, to introduce themselves and take us through the materials. You're welcome. Please feel free to submit any questions to the speakers throughout the session in the chat. Thank you all and enjoy.
Hi, my name is Rob Williams. I work for the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. I've been with the Federal Reserve about 23 years. Worked a good bit of my time in product management. And I look forward to talking to you today about the marketplace and some of the relevance for Fedwire data and some of what's happening in the marketplace and how that's influencing your need for this kind of information. Triandus?
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Triandus Luke. I'm a Senior National Account Relationship Manager. I want to echo Vanessa's comments that we really value this opportunity to engage with you. And I think we have some really good information to share with you today, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. So we will get started. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about why to use FedTransaction Analyzer. And I think there's many reasons, but there's a couple I want to share with you today. First and foremost, there are a lot of components involved in a wire transaction, and FedTransaction Analyzer helps to easily harvest that information and make it easily accessible for various analytic use cases. It helps saves time to when you need to gather information from auditors. I know there's a lot of times I heard from customers the application is very valuable when you're given any executive updates, any examiner requests, and even subpoenas. The application is also helpful in helping you easily compare and contrast multiple settlement arrangements across many different RTNs. And then also the tool is very helpful for reviewing any operational performance and monitoring for any errors and really identifying any opportunities for improvement in your wire transfer process. So now moving to how does FedTransaction Analyzer help? I think first and foremost, the application stores up to 7 years of Fedwire transaction detail. Also, the data is available for review early the next morning after our normal Fedwire operating hours. The data available in the application is broken up into 36 fields of extremely useful data. And we have reporting that is already pre-populated for you. So there isn't any need to create and start something from scratch. We have built-in search and filter features that allow you to manipulate and create different analysis for however you see fit. The data is available and automatically integrated into FedLine, so there's no need to install any hardware or software. Also, I think you'll have the decision of who you want to access this information. I know I've heard from customers and that many times it's useful just to share credentials or give credentials across the organization for folks like in compliance or audit, whatever the case may be, and it's extremely valuable. You can easily give access to whoever you see fit. And then last but not least, overall, we've designed the service to be convenient and hopefully take some time and effort out of some of the manual interventions for accessing this kind of data. So this next slide just illustrates how to access the service. Is no different than how you access some of the services that you have today. Simply just click on the Access FedLine Home, and with proper credentials, you'll be able to access the application. So moving forward, this is an illustration of the UX UI. One of the first thing that really stands out is the option for the two different options for report file type. One of the things you'll notice and it is by default, we have the ability to print this report or make it available in Excel as well as CSV. Right below that, you'll see the option in a capability of setting a range period. So again, you have 7 years of historical wire data, but for most financial institutions, they have a max search range of up to 18 months. In addition to the search range, you have some filters, some additional filters. Starting off, you have the minimum transaction value, which is default and set at a penny. And then you have the max transaction value that you can set whatever you want to, but the default option is a penny less than 10 billion. There's also the ability to filter by sender and receiver ABA. And then there's some additional filters below as well. And once you're comfortable and confident that you've gained all of the criteria that you want in your report, to access a report is as simple as clicking that Request Report tab at the bottom left corner of the slide. Once you do that, the system will go through its process and prepare the report for you. And once it's prepared, it'll be available to you on the right under View Reports. So there are many unique and useful features. I will touch on this slide just a little bit on a very high level. Starting with contextual video training, one of the things that we've done and added to the application once you've successfully generated a report is YouTube videos that where we go into detail about the different type of reporting and what it is and give you really a nice description of what that report is and how it can be beneficial. And then also we've taken the time out how it can be useful for the different departments, in the financial institution. We also have the time of day activity, which allows you to view your volume and value by the time of the day. We've also, and I talked a little bit about this earlier, but we've built in some filter and sort capabilities with some pivot tables and data slicers, which I'll get to, and you'll really have an opportunity to see firsthand the uses once I actually have an opportunity to demo the service. Also, the tool provides counterparty analysis, so you can see who your biggest senders and receivers are from a counterparty perspective. So here's just a breakdown of some of the pre-formatted reports and pre-populated reports we have available for you. Starting off the user specified report, that's pretty much just a data dump with 36 fields of data based off your search criteria. We have the time of day activity, which I referenced a little bit in the slide before, but that gives you a quick glance of your volume and your value by time period each day of the week. We have the Benny ID research report, and essentially this report just breaks down your wire activity by value and volume from a beneficiary identifier perspective, and what that is pretty much your customer's account number. So we'll go into a little detail how that is useful for various use cases. We also have the origination ID research report. It's pretty much a mirror image of that Benny ID research report, but on the flip side, this is your originators or your originations information. Going forward, we have the organization dashboard, and this is just a high-level activity summary of your financial institution. You'll see once I have an opportunity to demo the service, the nice graphs that we have pre-populated for you, as well as an opportunity to see some counterparty and top level type information. And then we have the customer dashboard. Again, it's a mirror image of the organization dashboard, but more so focused from a customer perspective. And I'll have an opportunity to showcase what that looks like in a little bit as well. And then last but not least, we have the activity by ISO country code. And for any wires that have any international wire components or has, the country, the two digit country codes, just an opportunity to really get a really nice glance of what that looks like for your financial institution. So what I'd like to do now is just turn it over to Rob and discuss some of the benefits and needs that we've heard from financial institutions.
All right, thanks, Triandos. Slide 13 provides a summary of the key value proposition for FTA. These include automation, analytics, reporting, and information or data delivery. Automation accelerates your processes for report generation and more convenient access to data. It may save you money by taking out processor data retrieval fees or accessing data that may have been stranded in a previous system. The Excel analytics that you'll see later in this presentation will demonstrate filters that can easily help you find the information that you need in this complex data set. Information delivery over an internet browser allows you to move this complex data into another system or get access to the data for easy reporting. Data can frequently be buried after events like mergers, where data integration from two systems or access to the data of the non-survivor is very difficult. These issues can create a real headache dealing with subpoenas or delivering account holder behavior patterns after a merger. FTA helps with these challenges. One final and critical benefit of FTA relates to contingency circumstances when a processor or an intermediary is missing data through a technical glitch or system outage. And I think Vanessa shared with us a great example of that already today. So having this additional source of low-cost data storage that's self-repairing to handle mergers and other data-oriented events is vital. Let's go on to slide 14. and talk about the some business considerations. The first business consideration I'd like to discuss today is your organization's treasury management services and relationship management and analytics of your customer relationships. This study, on an annual basis, EY produces a state of the industry assessment of the business value of cash management and treasury products offered by financial institutions. This study focuses on several key aspects of your business, including cash management, product feature growth, and revenue growth. The graph on the top demonstrates the impact of COVID on cash management revenue by banking segments. You'll notice that the 2022 cash management revenue declined significantly for larger financial institutions. The gold bar represents top 5 providers. The gray bar represents the tier 1 organizations, essentially large community and regional financial institutions. Tier 2 and 3 in red represent smaller institutions, around 50 million in asset range. It's interesting that COVID did not impact the smaller segment as significantly as it did the larger segments. It's also interesting that the smaller institutions grew revenue during this period. I can speculate that support to smaller organizations were able to provide based on their limited footprint may have been a contributor here. This is even more interesting if it represents a trend in growth among community banks as their product offerings begin to match larger organizations. You'll notice in 2021 that revenue came back and showed improved growth in smaller organizations above trend, also a good sign for community banks. The paper goes on to describe the feature sets that experienced revenue growth across the period of 2019 to 2021. The decline in paper-based products is very similar to what we've seen in point of sale for payment methods like cash. Products with either paper or manual processes have declined significantly and don't seem to be returning. This trend to fully digital product sets are a key trend and highlights 2 key factors. One is your access to end-to-end view of transaction data is improving as that data becomes available to you in these fully native electronic transactions. And secondly, your need to better understand the impact of counterparties on your business is growing as that data becomes available. Let's talk briefly about counterparty analysis. There are 2 key uses for counterparty analysis that can help you better understand your business and your place in the market. I'll describe the first as discovery analysis, where you're looking at metrics to understand the magnitude of impact associated with a single counterparty. Do you understand who your account holders are doing business with and the magnitude of these relationships from a volume and value perspective? One key aspect to this is the magnitude of the activity and its concentration of interaction with your account holders. A high value influx relationship with a single beneficiary in your organization can represent a critical funding source and an important corporate client. A large volume spread across many account holders in your organization may represent a business opportunity for catering to an important new corporate client. Inbound activity from foundational members of your community help you better understand banking relationships they may have based on your competitive strengths, what opportunities you may have to encourage them to do business with you. As product offerings move downstream to smaller institutions through innovation and the inevitable commoditization of technology services, DIs must use every resource at their disposal to compete. The ongoing digital transformation in banking will empower organizations that understand how to leverage all the data at their disposal in an ethical way. They may effectively grow the business and compete with other organizations in their market. Organizations that can't will be unable to offer the right products and able to successfully compete. Triandos, have you seen similar trends in your market?
Yes, certainly, Rob. definitely hearing from our customer base. We definitely recognize the importance of electronic payments, and definitely see the trend of paper declining. But in addition to that, I think you shared some really interesting research regarding electronic payments, specifically wire transfers, and the importance of managing your treasury and cash management customer base. So what I would like to do now is really focus on how FedTransaction Analyzer can uh, help you as financial institutions better manage that part of your business. We have a couple of reports which I'll delve into a little bit once I have an opportunity to demo the service. But one being our beneficiary ID research report is helpful in doing those different types of historical research and analyzing different kinds of payments received by your beneficiaries, as well as getting access to some of that counterparty information, which Rob talked a little bit about. In addition to that, our customer dashboard, as well as organization dashboard, provides quick glance of your top customers by origination as well as receipt. So this is just an illustration and something I really want to delve into once I get into the demo. I won't take a lot of time here, but just wanted to give you some of the reports that we'll be discussing in regards to account management. This is a illustration of our beneficiary ID research report, and you can see it's broken down by your customers' account numbers. And then we've built in feature where you can click on this plus icon and you can access that counterparty information, which Rob talked about, and most certainly a lot of value in knowing who your customers are receiving payments from. In addition to that, we have some other reports, which I'll go into a little bit detail, and you'll be able to get a clear illustration and use case of how you can utilize some of these reportings. But talk a little bit about our organization and our customer dashboards and the ability to easily get a quick glance of your top customer usage and also some of that counterparty information. And then I'll actually talk about some of the beneficiary ID research and some of the other reporting that we have available as well. So what I would like to do now is stop this presentation and actually walk you over to actually demo the service. So again, this is just a sample report of what you would receive if you generated a report, and most of you all who have generated reports and had an opportunity to see firsthand, you'll see pretty much how it's kind of broken down, and it starts with this instructions tab, and you have access to that user specified report, which I talked a little bit about. But what I like to do is move over and start with that organization dashboard, because Rob talked a little bit about treasury management and account management, and talked a little bit about understanding and really knowing your customers. And I think that's a big part of really managing that relationship, is not only knowing and having an idea of their normal volume as well as value, but also in addition to that, knowing who they're sending and receiving payments from, and who they're pretty much in business with. And this actual tab, you'll see at the beginning, it actually give you some really nice trend information. So you can see it's broken down by received as well as sent transactions over the time period that you selected. There's some data slicers over here to the right, but where I want to focus is if you scroll down, we've already got this pre-populated. You can see automatically we've broken down your top 10 originators by value as well as your top 10 beneficiaries by value. We've broken it down by volume as well as volume on the beneficiary side. So you get a quick glance view of, based off that criteria that you selected, you automatically pull that. So there's no need for you to go in and do any different analysis. We've kind of did all the work for you. So certainly a lot of value here. But Rob talked a little bit about, okay, so now you know your customers' activity, their volume, their value. What about who they're doing business with? And this is where I think this tool really adds value to it. So you can see the top 10 counterparty activity by originations as well as your beneficiaries. and then you can break it down by volume as well. So certainly a lot of value here. It's already pre-populated. You don't need to do anything but generate the report, and you'll have access to this kind of data. What I'd like to do now is move over to, I guess, a sister brother type report is the customer dashboard. So again, very similar to that organization dashboard. You can see quickly how we've broken down, and you can see your trend level information from a received, sent perspective. And we have that really nice and built in for you. If you scroll down again, you can see the top 10 receivers by value and volume. But in addition to that, if you really wanted to really see and identify your customers, you know, from a cut from an account perspective, or you wanted to really do an analysis based off one customer alone, you can certainly go here and utilize some of these data slicers. And this customer ID is pretty much your customer's account numbers. So if you wanted to, you know, select one of these account numbers, or if you wanted to do the multi-select, you just simply click this multi-select tab here, and you can select multiple account numbers and really get a really nice quick view of what your customers are doing across that time period you selected. So again, I think a lot of value here from an account management, treasury management perspective. And then also what I want to do quickly is take you over to the beneficiary ID research report. And let me unfilter here. So again, I know from a corporate perspective, you know, some of your customers may be utilizing the drawdown for whatever use case, but there's capability for you to search specifically for those drawdown requests. And you can simply do that by changing the business function here. And you can select the drawdown function, which are these two. The DRC is specifically for corporate. But it will break that report down. And again, this is your beneficiary ID research report, and these are your customers' account numbers. But if you click on one of these drop-down buttons, you'll see some of that counterparty information. And again, if you're more interested on that drawdown type of request and you want to do further research, what all you need to do is to access the per item level information is double click on one of these tabs, and it'll give you that per item level information. So you can see here, if you wanted to kind of do any further research or just get some more information regarding drawdowns, you know, it's all available for you on a high level summary view that I just illustrated to you before, or you can get it more refined and actually go into detail here. So those are just some of the examples of how you can use from an account management perspective. And what I like to do now is pass the torch back to Rob and discuss something in regards to compliance and some of the other use cases. So if you give me 1 second, I'm going to stop sharing here and actually go back to the deck.
Yeah, thanks, Triandos. And as you're switching over, that's very insightful and demonstrates a clear opportunity for organizations to better understand underlying trends in their data. Our next area of focus is risk and compliance management. In Fedwire, this business consideration continues to put pressure on financial institutions. Many organizations struggle with the complexity of tools being offered in the marketplace. A tidal wave of buzzwords and acronyms flood us with claims of artificial intelligence and machine learning. This product marketing tidal wave can be confusing and overwhelming for an institution that's trying to get their hands around fraud management or BSA and AML. No discussion of Fedwire and fraud would exclude the topic of business email compromise. On the right-hand side of slide 18, there is a great table from the annual AFP risk survey that summarizes the most prevalent types of business email compromise. I don't think we have time to dig into these today, but I did want to discuss the ways that organizations seek to mitigate BEC with the use of callbacks. One of the common themes that I hear from organizations with callbacks is complaints that the corporate customers don't listen to them and tell them to send the wire anyway. An hour or two later, the corporate realizes something's wrong and they find their error. One approach for addressing this challenge derived from DI conversations I've heard, that most organizations have a script they give to staff members and they will read it to their corporate clients. The corporate clients recognize it as a script and then they don't pay attention or listen. If the DI staff is able to call out an aspect of the wire pattern, like this is the first time this beneficiary has ever used this account number, the receptivity of the sender of the wire is much better and they're more likely to pause and listen. If your staff asks very specific information that lets the corporate treasurer know that you understand their activity, you have a much better chance of getting their attention. One other common mitigant for BEC is education. The AFP annual study showed declines in business email compromise. That's progress, but it's an ongoing work to maintain. Some institutions are requiring education and following up with their customers to encourage an annual certification. So this is a tip for you to consider. The second area is AML and BSA. From an original reputation perspective, no organization wants to be found out that they were duped or have a hub of mule or synthetic accounts. This area is critically important. In our earlier survey, many organizations were planning on spending more money in this area in the next 12 months. Vendors for this service can be very confusing to work with, as suggested earlier. Integration can be challenging. You may find yourselves in a position where your core processor doesn't want to give you access to the data, and the new vendor will be unable to implement their solution in your transaction flow. These are important things to keep in mind. If you need a solution now, implementation in this space can be a long-term proposition. So having a tool that helps you make Fedwire information transparent is a critical piece of this process, particularly as you're trying to ensure you don't spend money on something that really doesn't help you or you can't operationalize it. Does any of that sound familiar to you, Triandos?
Yep, certainly does. And I will move to the slide. Certainly, financial institutions can suffer losses as well as regulatory and compliance risks if things aren't, you don't have proper controls and procedures in place to properly identify anti-money laundering and wire risk monitoring, even international wires. So certainly, what I would like to do now is show you how FedTransaction Analyzer can be helpful in complementing some of the controls and procedures that you have set up today. So this is just an illustration of one of the reports that I'll walk you through when I jump back over to the demo. But this is our originator ID research report. This is your actual originators. And again, this is your account numbers from origination standpoint. Again, you have the drop down button where you can identify some counterparty information. But in addition to that, what I like to do is walk you through the ISO activity by country code, where you can identify wires with international wire components and where it has those country codes assigned to it. So what I would like to do now is pause or stop the actual deck and jump back over to showing you how FedTransaction Analyzer can be useful from a risk and compliance standpoint. Let me know if you can see the demo.
Yeah, it's visible, Triandos.
All right, outstanding. So Rob talked a little bit about suspicious activities and investigations. And one of the things he talked about was business compromise. And that really stood out. And FedTransaction can really be helpful to kind of complement that process, because he talked about financial institution having that procedure to where to protect their customers, they have a callback in place, whether that's, if it's a sheer volume of wires asked to be requested or processed or a certain value. Most certainly there's some benefit in that. But one of the things that Rob talked about is that sometimes you run into issues when you don't have any new information or relevant information to share to the customer to where they can really make a clear business decision if they want to send that wire or not. But FedTransaction Analyzer can most certainly help you in cases where you may uncover where someone has access their network, or potentially trying to send it a fraudulent payment and or switch an account number or whatever the case may be. There's certainly a way to utilize this kind of complement what you're doing. So what I'm in now is the origination ID research report. And again, this is your originator information. So it's broken down by, you can see here, this is your account number for your originators. And if you scroll down here, you'll see that counterparty information. But again, what you can do with these filters is you can actually go in and you can search specifically for a beneficiary ID. So an account number that one of your originators have wired to before. Maybe you want to go in and just check if it's a new wire or something that just, sending a red flag. Maybe you want to go in and identify if it's a wire that you sent to before. Simply change that field here, and if you know the account number, you can simply type it into this field here. So let me type 194. And you'll see if there was any activity from that account before, you can easily see the volume and value. And then again, if you double click on this information, obviously to get to the per item level, but I think it's valuable from that standpoint, being able to identify wires that have been sent, and you can actually see if there's a relationship that has been established. But then also if there's a wire where if you clicked in something and no wires or that account number didn't pop up in the search screen, maybe that's an opportunity for you to just reiterate and confirm that this is an account number that you're sure that your corporate customer would like to process this wire to, and really get that extra ability to confirm before actually processing that wire. So that's just one use case I'm thinking of. Rob talked a little bit about anti-money laundering, as well as some of the other compliance type issues. One of the cool things you can do also is there's search filters up here where you can search specifically for a sending financial institution by sender name, as well as sender ABA. You can get into some of the different criteria by receiver ABA, receiver ABA, and you can create a really nice analysis that way, as well as jumping over to the user specifier report, where it's a data dump of all your information. You can create the analysis however you see fit. But in addition to that, moving over to this, actually, let me point out something on the beneficiary ID report. So if you wanted to identify wires with international wire components, you can go and you can search specifically for that country code. So normally you'll see 2-character by US or whatever case may be. You'll be able to identify those country codes here, and you can search specifically this way to identify wires with international wire components, or you can go over and identify those wires by using our activity by ISO country code. So just a couple of use cases there from a compliance and risk standpoint. And what I'd like to do is pass it back to Rob to discuss some other use cases.
Great resources, Triandos. And I think that what you're suggesting is an organization every morning could go create a copy of this report, make it available in their operations area where staff can easily access it, and do some of this research on the fly when they identify a wire that could be problematic, or they have a callback they need to do to a corporate client to confirm that information with them. So our third and final business consideration focuses on DI cash and liquidity management. Shifting to 24/7 is rapidly approaching, and a trend our business that's having a significant impact. With the growth of RTP and the impending implementation of FedNow next year, the Federal Reserve recently announced a shift to 24/7 accounting for Fed accounts. This announcement means your Fed account has the possibility and capability to go into overdraft or have excess funds over the weekend. This change, along with the rising interest rates, are getting the attention of liquidity management teams in financial institutions. The methods of managing liquidity will continue to mature as payments like instant and same-day ACH accelerate. Financial institutions need tools and methods to understand the net changes in their Fed accounts. The graph on this slide from Oliver Wyman effectively demonstrates this cycle and its drivers. Another area of focus that's so important in today's climate is merger and acquisition. The S&P graph in Figure 2 on this slide provides a good example of how COVID effectively froze the merger and acquisition market for a little over a year and how it's roared back in 2021. While this graph shows a decline in second quarter for 2022, recent activity in August and September timeframe has been active. Several decision makers and senior bankers are looking at rapidly changing trends like instant and non-bank competitors and are giving consideration to what transition looks like for their organization. I think some bankers are looking at the risk of potential change in instant payments and asking whether they want to journey across that next transition. It's better to finish strong now or start the next journey that would dramatically impact the legacy of their leadership. And this is on their minds. If you're struggling with the same question, it is at least good to know that you're not alone. If your organization wants to take advantage of this trend, then an acquisition is likely in your future. As the acquirer, getting access to historical transaction data can be a real challenge. There may be many factors impacting this. If the financial institution has two different processors or one processor may not easily or cost effectively give you access to that historical data. So having tools or resources in the network that help you access that data is critical. If you can get access, there's still the issue of integration and being able to consolidate the data into a single data source so it can be analyzed in aggregate. A resource that simplifies this and allows your organization to get ahead of this challenge during your due diligence period or after the closing is invaluable. With the Great Resignation, many organizations are looking to replace staff who have for many years been guardians for their organization in payments like Fedwire. You know the team members I'm referring to, those who have many years of experience and intuitively know when something with an account holder isn't right. As your staffing transitions, it's critical to monitor their processes for compliance to procedures and occurrences of significant operational activities, like trying to retrieve a wire on behalf of a customer. Having resources available that enable leadership to keep a watchful eye without the staff feeling crowded or discouraged is a real asset. Triandios, is this something you're seeing in the marketplace as well?
Yep, certainly is, Rob. You talked a little bit about staffing and the challenges there and the needs for, creating a more efficient organization, certainly. So what I'd like to do is talk about how FedTransaction Analyzer can kind of help you better manage or at least provide some more data to help you make quality decisions in regards to some of those different challenges that you talked about. What I will spend most of my time on in this particular demo is the time of day activity, which again really gives you a really nice quick glance of your volume and value trends by the day of the week. So I won't spend much time here. Here's just an illustration of it, which I'll actually walk you through as we get in the demo. So again, let me switch over. Let me stop the presentation and getting back into the actual spreadsheet. So what I'm doing now is just simply going over to this time of day activity dashboard. And if this is your first time seeing it, pretty much what it automatically does for you is it breaks down your wire volume by the criteria that you selected, by the time of the day, as well as the day of the week. And it does the same thing by your value. So it gives a average net value by time of the day as well as day of the week. And I find it very useful, and I heard from customers when they are dealing with staffing issues or want to better understand how to staff, this part of their operations, is very useful in being able to see when are your peak times, right? So identifying in this particular example, you can see easily, between 9 and 11 o'clock, you having the most volume. And maybe that's an opportunity for where you have some of the, uh, uh, you have it properly staffed. And then you can see some of your slower periods of the day as well. So maybe this information can be helpful from that standpoint. But then also Rob talked a little bit about, cash management, liquidity management, and really getting as much data to properly manage that. And this right here just gives you a net average value of your value that time of the day. So you can get an idea of what you're sending from a net send, net receive standpoint. And hopefully this information can be useful to help you better manage your account. And then we have the filters up here as well. You can search by, business function code, or if you wanted to get more refined, you certainly can do that up in these criteria up here as well. But I mentioned before the actual YouTube videos, if you wanted to, really gain an idea of what the different reports are available. One thing I didn't point out is they're available in these links here. So you get a clear description of what each report is, what it does, and really how it can be useful for your various departments in your financial institution. So I will jump back over to the deck, and Rob will talk a little bit about some of the resources we have available for you.
Great, thanks, Triandos. So for those of you, we will provide the slides to those of you who have joined us today. So I do want to take a minute to thank you for joining us. And in these slides, you'll be able to access these resources by just clicking on the links. There are several here that I think you might find useful. There is a resource center on frbservices.org called Risk Management Toolbox. We publish research there. We publish webinars there. There are several tools there to help you navigate what services we provide for different aspects of your business. You might find that useful. The second link is this service itself. And access to the product sheet, as well as there are some videos there that help you understand some of the functions that Triandos already described for you, and give you a much more broader view of the service, including like where the agreements are. The following link then is the operating circular, of course, which governs our services. So accessing that and understanding that will help you know what the parameters of the service is and how it works. And then finally, the last link in this slide is a link to Fedwire Funds service, which I'm assuming probably many of you are aware of. And that's, if you need some background in Fedwire itself, that's a great resource for you. So looking at the clock, I wanted to scan the chat for just a second to see if we had any questions and give people like one last opportunity to throw something out there. I will tell people who are in the chat, I provided you some instructions on how you can get access to FedTransaction Analyzer. And I'll read that to people who might be on the phone at this point. And at the end of this paragraph, there's a phone number that you can use to reach out. It's our call center if you aren't familiar with it, but I'll provide it here. So if you have Fedline Advantage access, your EUAC should be able to submit a request within the EUAC Center in Fedline Home for FTA. If you aren't certain, or if you don't have access to Fedline Home at this point, you're certainly welcome to call the call center itself, our customer support hotline, which is 888-333-7010, and someone will be able to help you. So I will check the chat one more time. I didn't see anything there. I know we got just a couple of minutes left. But if we don't have any questions,
Hey, Rob, there are a few questions.
Great. You want to throw them out there?
Yep. So is this search over 7 years or only 1 month?
You want to handle that one, or shall I?
Yeah, I handle it. So FedTransaction Analyzer has data as far with historical wire information as far back as 7 years. So you have the capacity and ability to pull wires as far back as 7 years, but there is a max search range. And for most financial institutions, that max search range is 18 months. But just based off the sheer volume and some of the governor restraints that we have in the application, some financial institutions will be limited to a few months, or in some cases, a few days, just depending on the amount of data. But you still can go back as far as 7 years to pull historical wire data.
Great. I'll go ahead and grab the next one, Giannis, if you want to leapfrog that question and go to the next one. The next question is, does this also analyze ACH transactions, or is this service strictly for wires? So today, this activity is only for Fedwire transaction activity. So it does not include ACH. The Federal Reserve is making a new service available called Fed Payments Insights that it's not quite as robust as what we're sharing with you today. But that is a service where you can go in and drill into some of the aggregate level information as well as some detail. And I think that our organization intends to continue to build in that direction through that service. You got the next one?
Yep, certainly. So from Janice asks, if we utilize a third-party vendor such as Fiserv Payments Exchange to process our wires, can we utilize this service? At the end of the day, they send wires from us to Fedwire. So Janice, to answer your question, absolutely. And something that I certainly encourage my customers to do. I know it becomes valuable, especially when you're using a third-party vendor, if there's any disruption or any type of opportunities where you weren't quite sure and you wanted to validate, confirm some of your wire transfers or transactions. I recommend them utilizing FedTransaction Analyzer so they can compare and contrast. And then also, I think if you see from just the demo today, the different use cases you can really take advantage of. And I think just having an additional tool where you can kind of pull some of that historical wire information is certainly valuable.
All right, great. I didn't see another one, Giannis. Did you see another question there?
Nope, I think that is the last one, Rob.
All right, well, that concludes our webinar today on management of Fedwire transactions using FedTransaction Analyzer. I'm hoping our time today has benefited you and your organization. We're hoping the presentation made you aware of some of the critical trends impacting our industry and provided a few practical ways you can be proactive in understanding the impact of these trends on your institution. Our objective was to share with you ways you can begin to achieve this and share with you reasonably priced tools available to you on Fedline. Giannis, do you want to add anything in closing?
I saw Alan had one more question, and I know we got a couple minutes. I want to ask you.
Great.
What is the cost? So for most financial institutions with Fedline Advantage or with Fedline Access, the cost is sometimes built into. For that question, I would ask if you, I would defer that to your account executive and really have them take a quick look analysis of your current Fedline access, and then they'll be able to determine if there is a cost, and if so, how much. So I would definitely prefer to do that way. But I think that's the last question, Rob. I don't have anything. I just want to thank everybody for coming today and giving us an opportunity to demo this great service. Your feedback is definitely important to us, and we're doing everything in our power to make sure that we have a product and services that can kind of help complement and help you better manage your wire transfer business. So any input, any feedback is definitely appreciated. So thank you.
Yep. And let me add to Triando's goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you giving us this time, and we've enjoyed having the opportunity of bringing this to you. You can also reach out to the call center on the number that we provided here in the chat as well. I'll give that to you one more time, just in case you're one of those folks on the phone and maybe you're grabbing for a pen right now. It's 888-333-7010. So thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.